Anything can be cursed. That box in your grandma's closet might be haunted with her ex-lover's vengeful spirit. That old clock in your uncle's living room might be possessed by a dirty old demon. And that crusty old sock under your brother's bed is probably haunted with the souls of thousands of unborn children. Ew. Today, I've got some creepy stories about cursed objects. Be careful what you buy and what you collect, because it might just bite. If you have a story of your own, share it with us at darkstories.org. Now, let's begin. Nazi Coin, from Anonymous. I was 27 years old and living in the Midwest for work. I grew up on the West Coast, but I had to move away due to the lack of work available there. This happened back in 2008 when the economy was pretty bad. One day, I was checking out this hipster record store on my day off. They had a selection of random old coins. I bought about a dozen of them. And one of the most memorable coins was this old Nazi Germany coin. I was a history buff and an amateur coin collector, so when I saw that coin, I didn't think more than freaking cool. Don't get the idea that I'm some Nazi or something like that. I'm just a collector. Heck, I'm even Jewish on my mother's side, and I think that may be why this coin may have had a connection to me, one beyond just collecting. Anyway, when I got home from the store that day, I placed the coin in my lockbox with my other old coins that I've collected during my time here, and soon I forgot about it. Within 2 days from when I bought those coins, my roommate's 2-year-old son had some weird reaction to who knows what, and had to be rushed to the hospital because he collapsed and his breathing was shallow. Within a few hours, he was back to normal, and the doctors were stumped as to what happened. The following week, my gallbladder ruptured and leaked bile all over my intestines. I had to have emergency surgery. They removed my gallbladder and 8 inches of my intestines. It was bad. I've got a huge scar now across my stomach. After my surgery, I moved back to my parents to recover. Once there, I began having these reoccurring nightmares of this dark, shadowy man standing over me. It started with him peeking through my closet doors at me. Then he would come out of the closet, moving a few feet closer to my bed, slowly. This went on for about 2 weeks, and during this time, my dog would not stay in my room at night. He seemed scared of it. This was so weird to me, because he had always slept at the foot of my bed when I was there, for as long as I could remember. Then he started throwing up all the time, and licking all the hair off his legs and paws. We had to take the poor thing to the vet, and once again the professionals were stumped. They didn't know why he was doing that, and he seemed healthy otherwise. They told us he was stressed out about something, causing him to have a nervous tic or stressed reaction. Not long after that, my mom's cockatiel died, after pulling out most of his feathers. Another reaction to stress, we were told. After 2 weeks of these weird reoccurring dreams, I was lying in bed on my back one night, still trying to fall asleep. And suddenly, I felt a presence standing next to my bed. I don't know how to explain it. When I looked, I saw a man standing there, a large man, who seemed angry, though I could only tell that from his stance. For a moment, I thought it was my dad sleepwalking. He had never done that before, but what other explanation did I have? I tried to roll over on my side to face him, and to ask him what he's doing, when I realized I was paralyzed. This scared the heck out of me. The next thing I knew, he was on top of me, sitting on my chest, with his hands wrapped around my throat. No matter how close I was to him, no matter how much my eyes were adapted to the dark, all I could see was a large black mass for his body. No features at all, just a vague human shape. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Of course, I panicked. After nearly a minute of this, I could feel my chest beginning to hurt, burning from a lack of air. I was trying everything I could do to move and breathe, but I couldn't. Then all of a sudden, with the last bit of air I held inside, I yelled out, "Jesus." I don't know why this came to me. Maybe I saw it in a movie, or maybe the idea just randomly came to me. I've never been religious. I've never even been to a church. But I was desperate, and I thought I was going to die. I wasn't even sure if I could say it, because the grip around my throat was that tight. It was an extreme fight just to be able to say that word. But the moment the word came out, my attacker's hands flew off of my neck, and he disappeared, right into thin air. After this episode, I did not sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I told my parents about it. They were dumbfounded. They had never once experienced anything like that in that house. In fact, it wasn't until then that I noticed. It all started when I got that Nazi coin. Later that day, I was going through my boxes from moving back, since I was finally strong enough after my surgery. My mom was looking at the coins I brought back, and she noticed the Nazi coin. She chewed me out for having it. She was an old Jewish mom and did not care about the history or value of the object. The fact that it was from Nazi Germany was plenty enough for her to be furious. Amidst her anger, it was that moment that it became clear to me. It was all because of that damn coin. All this bad luck. All from that little round piece of metal. Everything that had happened. My friend's kid being rushed to the hospital. My stomach being destroyed. My dog getting sick. The bird dying, the nightmares, the thing trying to kill me in my bed. It was all after I got that darn coin. Later that day, I took the coin to a pawn shop and sold it for nearly nothing. I never told them that it was cursed. I feel guilty about that, because when everything immediately went back to normal and everything was peaceful again, I knew that it was no coincidence. There's something wrong with that coin, and it's been 11 years now since I parted ways with it. Whoever has it now, I'm sorry, and good luck. The All-Seeing Eye, from Isameed. I'm a guy from Pakistan. My daily night ritual consists of me smoking a joint in my yard at 2 a.m. when my parents have gone to bed. It's my way of relaxing after the daily grind, and I look forward to it. Weed isn't that common here, so I smoke hash joints which are far more potent than weed buds. So after smoking up, I bent down to put it out, when I noticed a gleam among the dirt and grass. Upon further investigation, it turned out to be a strange coin in my yard. It was dark out, obviously, so I decided to go inside to check it out, to see it under some light. I pocketed the coin quickly, which felt ice cold to the touch, even though it was hot outside. My house has double doors like most houses do in Pakistan, as it gets really hot in the summers. The outer door is usually one with a mesh, and the one on the inside is usually a sturdier one. I would crack open the mesh door and sneak out as it creaks loudly if I open it all the way. So as I was making my way through the door, I hit my face on what seemed like a person in the doorway. I recoiled and nearly screamed, thinking it was my mom and I had been caught. The door gave a loud creak, the sort of creak that could wake up the dead. My face was hurting from running into something, but upon noticing that no one was in the doorway, I was confused, and I decided to quickly get inside before I did get caught. What in the world did I run into? I made my way into the house, locking the doors behind me. Where my face had run into something, my skin was burning. As soon as I made my way to my room, something felt even more wrong. I was very sleepy, and even though I wanted to go to the bathroom to check my face in the mirror, I was too overcome with exhaustion. I figured it was a good idea to just lie down. After all, I was supposed to be in bed, and if anyone was going to check on me after hearing that noise, I'd be in trouble if I wasn't in bed. So I just lay down, not even bothering to turn off the UV lights. My room has these black light UV LED light strips. I was really into the cool stoner guitarist hippie kind of flair. I laid down for a couple of minutes, trying to slow down my breathing. It finally did get under control, and I thought of getting up for a glass of water. That's when I found that I was not able to move at all. I couldn't even get my neck to budge. The only things that would move were my eyes. It was so strange. I'd lost all my sleepiness now, and apparently I'd also lost my motor functions. On top of that, I felt freezing cold, and I could see my own breath now. As I mentioned before, it was quite hot now. I should not be able to see my breath at all. It was physically impossible for our house to get that cold here. Due to me being a bit stoned, the first thing that came to mind was that I hit my head a little too hard, and that I smoked a little bit too much. Maybe I had a concussion or something. I explained away everything to myself, and I began to over-explain it, making myself believe that I may have given myself permanent brain damage when I hit something on the way inside. Now I was freaking out, thinking I'd ruined my life just to smoke a joint. As I lay there cursing myself and contemplating if I would survive until morning, I thought I heard a sound, one that sounded like a whisper. I quickly tried my best to ignore the sound, as I knew thinking that I heard a whisper would only make me more paranoid, and from the looks of it, I might have to lay like this for the next 8 hours. I began to hear more noises, and they steadily freaked me out more and more. I swear I could hear a child crying. I kept trying and failing to ignore the sounds. I was beginning to think, this has to be the dumbest way of suffering. I still felt cold, which was good, I guess. That meant I still had my nerve endings transmitting coldness to my brain. I was about to look for more positives in the situation when I noticed something in the corner of my room on the floor. At first, I thought it was a pile of clothes. I'm a pretty neat person, and I didn't recall having a pile of clothes in my floor, so it didn't make sense to me. I couldn't really be sure though, as the lighting in my room wasn't very good for details. However, the thing that had caught my eye was the form in the floor that looked to be a small boy with his knees to his face, and thanks to the UV lights, his eyes seemed to glow and gleam. I was horrified. I tried to look at the details from the corner of my eye. My head was pounding from the impact earlier, and my eyes were strained to try to see who was in my room. It was definitely a kid in the fetal position. He was facing downward. My heart felt like it dropped in the pit of my stomach when I realized that the eyes I saw were on top of his head. The kid was bald, but something was wrong with him. It seemed like his skin was not reflecting light at all, and this bald, demonic kid wasn't wearing anything. Yet I couldn't see his skin, not a bit of it, just pitch black. I felt tears in my eyes welling up. When I finally blinked, the kid was gone. I thought maybe I had hallucinated him, so I sighed. But my relief was short-lived as I later noticed this demonic child crawling on the walls like it was no big deal. I couldn't scream. It felt like my lungs had no air in them at all. He crawled on the ceiling and on the wall where my bed was. He was right behind my head at one point, and I could feel something covering my eye. I later realized he had been licking my eyes. It was then that I passed out entirely. When I finally woke up, I heard a voice from the darkness. I do not remember the language it spoke, but it sounded like a voice that wanted me to know something. But I don't think I'll ever recall what that something was, though I do kind of remember the words, "sight for a reward." My head was pounding, my ears ringing when I got up. I was groggier than ever. I picked up my phone to swipe the alarm to snooze. When I realized I was moving again, I felt such relief. I quickly went to the bathroom to look for a scar or injury on my head, but there wasn't any. My eye was red though, where I'd been licked, and seemed a shade lighter. Or maybe I was just paranoid, and my blood was just finally getting back into my face. I was trying to convince myself that everything that had happened was just a bad nightmare. Then I remembered that weird coin I found outside. I quickly checked my pocket, and I didn't fill the coin. I scoured my bedsheet for the coin, and still nothing. I then realized I was late for my linear algebra class. I didn't even have time for a shower anymore. I dressed up and got to my class. As I entered the room, the classroom looked different, but I didn't have time to notice exactly how, as we had a surprise quiz. I sat down with a sigh. I was gonna fail this, I knew it. I sucked at math, and I'd managed to fail every single math subject my degree had. I'd barely managed to pass after some retries. While driving home after school, I realized why the coin was no longer in my pocket. When I woke up, I wasn't wearing the same trousers or shirt I'd been wearing the last night. So I found the trouser and shirt in the floor in the back seat. Inside the pocket of the trouser was the coin. The moment I touched it again, my entire body trembled and went freezing cold. I'm scared now. I don't know what this coin is, or why it's affecting me like this. I'm open to suggestions, because I know of some stories where people try to get rid of cursed things, but they always come back. If you have any idea what I should do here, please let me know. The Metallica Tape, from Grace T. A few years back, when I was 15, I had just started buying cassette tapes to collect. I'm a huge Metallica fan, and I'd been looking for a Master of Puppets tape. I'd basically given up trying to get my hands on a Kill 'Em All tape. I didn't trust eBay, and now that I think about it, I didn't trust buying anything used online. Luckily for me, there was a guy at my school who sold CDs, records, and cassettes named Dave. Dave was a bit of a sketchy guy, but at least I knew that if I got ripped off, I'd have an easier time getting my money back. I approached him one day and asked if he had a Master of Puppets cassette. As soon as I asked him that, he went white as a ghost. He looked sick almost. "Dude, what's wrong with you?" I asked him. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me as if I'd said a forbidden name. A few seconds go by, and he grabs the tape from his locker, practically throwing it at me. He takes my $10 and speed walks away. I stood there dumbfounded. I looked at the box. It looked like a normal Master of Puppets tape box. You know, with the graveyard's cross headstones and the hands in the dark red sky. Then came the moment of truth, the actual tape. I had to see if it was legit. I opened the box, and it looked fine enough. Now I needed to see if it actually worked. It wouldn't surprise me if I got home and it didn't play. As I put the cassette up, planning to play it at home that day, I suddenly felt nauseous. I had no idea why. I felt perfectly fine before. My instincts kept telling me to throw the tape in the trash and to just get one somewhere else, but I didn't. Ugh, I wish I did. Eventually, I was able to ignore the weird feeling. When I got home after school, I popped the tape into my cassette and pressed play. And nothing happened. I took the tape out and put it back in. Still nothing. I put the dang thing in 6 times altogether and nothing happened each time. At this point, I was getting irritated because I thought Dave had ripped me off. That would have explained his behavior when he gave it to me. I decided to give it one more try, and if it didn't work, I was going to confront him the next day. I put the tape in and pressed play once more. Nothing. Well then, I thought, Dave better not have spent my $10. As soon as I reached out to turn it off and pull out the tape, a blood-curdling scream came spilling out of it. Unless James Hetfield had taken hormone pills to sound like a woman, I don't think that scream was coming from him. I mean that sound. My God, it sounded like the woman was being burned alive. I repeatedly pressed pause, but it wouldn't stop. This went on for about 5 minutes, and in that time frame, I kid you not, a light bulb a few feet away from me just popped, glass shattering in the floor. After a few more minutes, the screaming stopped, but the tape didn't. It went straight into the song Battery. Keep in mind that I've listened to this album numerous times, and while Battery is the first song played, there's absolutely no screaming whatsoever. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know whether to be scared of the screaming or the fact that my light bulb just exploded as a reaction. I grew a pair and played the tape again, but I could not get the screaming to return. Not until I just sat there and listened through the entire album, rewound it, and played it back. The screaming came again just like before, except this time, the entire house just went dark. Every light went off. By then, I was losing it. I knew I should have listened when that tape was giving me bad vibes, and by the way Dave had acted, he knew something was wrong with the tape, yet just gave it to me. I couldn't sleep well that night. I kept having nightmares of a woman screaming, and at a certain point I could have sworn I woke up and the screaming was still there. Not only that, but it felt as if someone was in my room with me. Ugh, my skin crawls just thinking about it. The next day at school, I went to look for Dave, but he didn't show up. He didn't show up that week, nor that month. And to be completely honest, I never saw Dave again. I've no idea what the heck happened to him, why that tape is what it is. But I learned my lesson that day. Be careful what you buy, and who you buy it from. The Clock, from Scaldren. This happened to my parents, and it took place at my late grandparents' estate. My grandparents on my dad's side both died in the year 2011, from separate causes. My grandmother from cancer on Valentine's Day, and my grandfather died peacefully in his sleep almost a year after. That following Valentine's Day, my father got a weird feeling to go check on the house, and found that a frozen pipe had exploded, flooding the house in a few feet of water, destroying many of the items inside. This meant that the whole house had to be renovated, and all the items inside that escaped the water had to be removed. One cold winter day in 2013, my parents headed over to the house so they could pick up and choose what items to toss or keep. After a few hours of sitting, they finally came to the last item, a very old, small grandfather clock that had not worked once in the over 50 years it had been in that house. "Should we take it or toss it?" my mom asked as she handed the clock to my father to examine. Let's toss it," he said, after giving it a once-over. "It's never worked, and my parents never mentioned it was special or anything." Alright, well, my mother's reply was cut abruptly short by the sudden sound of a fast, soft tick, 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 tick. It was coming from the clock, and then it chimed, loudly. Something I'd never seen it do. Something my father said it had never done in the 5 decades it had been in that house. My parents both stood there motionless in absolute shock. The clock continued to tick and chime, like it had just been finished in a factory. After about a minute of shocked silence between them, my father looked at my mother and simply said, "Guess we're taking it." And she quickly agreed. They packed up the rest of the things they wanted to bring home. The whole time the old clock continued to tick, and even chimed again as if to prove to them that this ancient relic had truly sprung back to life. Finally, with everything packed, they loaded the still ticking clock into the car, and as soon as my dad placed it in the trunk, it stopped. The clock went completely silent, not making a sound as they drove back home. In fact, it hasn't made a sound since that day, and now sits silently in our living room, all these years later. Now you may think this was just a coincidence. Maybe the batteries had just a little bit of juice left in them, and moving the clock around brought it back for a moment. But when my dad opened the back of the clock, etched on the inside were the letters IS, my grandfather's initials. It was his clock, and my dad is sure that he wanted him to have it. The clock sits nearest the corner by the stairs. We had a plumber come over once, but he left horrified one day, claiming that as he went down the stairs, someone grabbed him by the shoulder. When he turned around, no one was there, but the clock was ticking. We couldn't get that plumber back to the house no matter how much we tried. We no longer own the house, and my dad has told me this story a few times, every time ending by saying that he never believed in ghosts or anything paranormal before that day, and that he was happy to have a sign that something exists beyond this life. After each telling, I always go over to the ancient grandfather clock in my living room and stare at it, waiting to hear if it will start ticking again. Cursed items aren't just your sister's weird Barbie doll with half its face melted, or that super creepy sculpture your demented aunt made that you totally don't want to trash because it gives you nightmares. Nah, cursed objects are items that have a spirit attached, and nothing but nightmares and torment come from them. Can you believe there are people out there that want to buy these kinds of items? And I totally don't have a pile of them in the corner right now. Weird. Good night. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Check the links below for a link to share your story with us, a link to donate to our Patreon, and a link to check out our merch store. Now, as usual, here are my 5 favorite early comments from the previous video about 6 creepy sightings of unexplained monsters. Sir Lucas says, "Once I saw someone get meatballs on flatbread at Subway." Ew. I guess some people just don't love themselves. Dubco says, "My son named his Roblox character after you." Rocking it. I can't believe how flattered I am hearing that. Give your son a mega oof for me. Banana Mukbang says, "Story 0. Me at 3 a.m. in the kitchen in my briefs gobbling shredded cheese. I don't know about you guys, but shredded cheese tastes best. I mean, if you get it in a block, it just doesn't taste the same." Isaiah Wilson says, "Hello, Mr. Darkness. A video on strange creatures sighted here in East Tennessee would be a mighty addition. That's awfully a specific place, but maybe East Tennessee does have quite a few monsters." Baby Girl says, "I live in Alaska, so whenever I'm out in the wilderness, I'm glad I have your stories to prepare myself, just in case anything strange happens. If my videos have taught you guys anything, is that if you have to go out in the wilderness, don't do it alone, and don't do it without the biggest caliber weapon you can find." Well, that brings us to the end of this Darkness Prevails episode, but don't you worry, more scary stories are on the way. Until next time, here are the credits to my amazing patrons who continue to donate. They're awesome people. Remember, stay safe out there and stay creepy, because this world is a strange one.